Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Sun's chief political correspondent, Jack Elsom, and the Guardian's deputy political editor, Jessica Elgot. Welcome and lovely to see both of you. So to the front pages then, let's start with the Eye. It leads on the collision off the Yorkshire coast between a tanker and a chemical cargo vessel, which caused a massive fire and repeated explosions. The Metro sums the events up in one word: catastrophic, after the collision prompted concern over possible fuel spills. And the Sun, too, a one-word headline: hellfire. The FT reporting on the stock markets tumbling after President Trump refused to dismiss a possible recession. The Telegraph says new measures advanced by Angela Rayner. Farmers could be compelled to sell fields at lower prices, prompting widespread concern about the impact on rural communities. The Guardian says the Prime Minister has labelled the nation's jobless figures indefensible in a push to overhaul benefits. Daily Express reports that there's been a massive security breach at the Ministry of Defence after more than 260 phones disappeared in 2 months. And the Star claims AI is trying to make the internet impossible for us to understand. I don't need the AI for that, to be fair. But anyway, Jack and Jessica are here. Dramatic pictures leading the newspapers, including yours in the Sun. The headline there: hellfire in the North Sea.
Totally shocking, and you're right. This picture of the two ships just exploding into a massive series of fireballs, making lots of the front pages today. And when you look at those images, I think it's pretty miraculous that so far we've had no confirmed fatalities, more than 30 people rescued, although obviously, very sadly, we have someone who still hasn't been recovered and the search is being called off tonight. I think what many people are going to be looking at these pictures now asking is, how the hell was this allowed to happen? Because you had a stationary vessel, you then had another vessel which seemed to T-bone right into the side of it. Usually in these cases, there's three main reasons why ships crash. One is very bad weather, one is human error, and the other is a mechanical failure. And so I think that there's been an investigation launched tonight into exactly how this happened. I think the Transport Secretary just confirmed that. But many people will be seeking answers to this pretty horrible tragedy.
Yes, and I mean, the reports of people, jumping off the vessels. I mean, the size of these ships to jump off.
It'd be like jumping off a bridge.
You damage yourself, yeah, indeed.
It would completely be like jumping off a bridge. I mean, you can't really, it doesn't do it justice just how high those things are, but also just how big they are as well. It will take something like that vessel a long time to stop when it's going at full pace, because they just carry so much momentum and so much weight.
And clearly, the search for the one missing crew member called off tonight, but one hopes possibly on that score. In the meantime, the focus will be to the environmental disaster. The Eye: jet fuel spills into the North Sea. This was a vessel chartered by the US military, and the other vessel was carrying toxic chemicals.
I mean, it's the worst of all possible combinations, it seems like, when it comes to the potential environmental impacts. We know that there is some very specially protected environmental areas around there, potentially even a seal reserve. Tonight, the Transport Secretary is saying she doesn't think there seems to be a risk so far to air pollution, anything that might affect sort of people living around those coastal areas. But it's going to be an incredibly intense clean-up operation that's needed once the daylight lifts and we see the full extent of it.
Well, we just had a statement actually issued by the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, suggesting that the Maritime Accident Investigation Branch has now begun a preliminary assessment. She's working closely with the MCAs. They conduct an assessment of any counter-pollution response which may be required over the coming days, and also thanking the Coast Guard, the RNLI, other emergency services who responded to the incident on the scene swiftly, she says. They helped rescue those in immediate danger. I know they will continue to work tirelessly over the coming days. My thoughts are with all those involved, especially the family of the missing crew member. And then goes on to give a bit more detail about the vessel. So, an investigation very much needed. If we take a look at the Daily Telegraph, it's saying out loud what some people have been suggesting, that foul play has not been ruled out. Is that because one vessel was stationary, as you put it?
Well, it is quite odd, isn't it? And the Daily Telegraph today have a government source telling them that investigations are obviously at a very early stage, and those MAIB investigations often take a very long time to come through. But they are saying that the incident could not be not attributed to foul play, i.e. foul play could not be ruled out at this stage. If that is the case, and I think that it is pretty quite unlikely at this point, but if it is the case, often massive national security implications, especially when you consider that this tanker was carrying jet fuel for the United States military. So, all sorts of questions start popping up in your mind, don't you, when it comes to these sort of things, although, it's obviously just speculation at the moment. Nothing's been ruled out, but nothing's been ruled in, so I think we should probably treat it with a bit of caution.
And a ship on autopilot is another explanation as well, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and given the geopolitical climate, obviously, I think, and things being at a very early stage, obviously, I think that officials aren't absolutely ruling that out. It'll clearly be something that they want to look at. Most people, in government guiding away from that tonight, as a possibility. But of course, it is going to raise questions because this is in daylight. This is 2 large ships we were operating autopilot. How this happened, how those, as Jack was saying, it's quite difficult to understand how this happened, and something that the investigation will obviously need to get to the bottom of.
Yes, fog, of course, bad visibility may well be part of that investigation as well. Let's go to that geopolitics, shall we, which is also on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Trump set to lift Ukraine weapons ban as soon as, says today here, which is out tomorrow at this point, isn't it? An American ban on sending weapons and intelligence to Ukraine could be lifted as early as Tuesday when peace talks begin in Saudi Arabia. Now, this is fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, this weapons and intelligence ban really does seem to be hurting Ukraine on the battlefield. It also seems to have shimmied them along into potentially giving more concessions than they might otherwise like to have done, whether that is ceasefire in the air and in the sea with Russia. Good news seems to be coming out of Saudi Arabia at the moment, where tonight in Jeddah we have those talks between Marco Rubio and American officials and then Ukrainian officials. All seems to be coming to a head about whether or not they can be in a position to start peace talks with Russia. And the price of that could be some concessions from Ukraine, but they badly need that military and the military intelligence and weapons going back to the front line. So while they get to that point of having a ceasefire with Russia, they can continue to repel Russian forces, which are now putting on a bit of a renewed offensive, especially in that Kursk region in Russia. And so, and Keir Starmer obviously seems to be lobbying Donald Trump tonight. Had a phone call with him in which he obviously pressed to have this embargo lifted. So hopefully we get some white smoke out of that in the next few hours or days.
Yes, and we've just had fresh pictures in, actually, of the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio meeting the Saudi Crown Prince as well, Mohammed bin Salman, as you can see. He's also spoken to Volodymyr Zelensky, who was there, but not actually speaking to Rubio, it seems. The latest we're hearing that they talked about promoting a stable government in Syria, Houthi threats in Yemen, reconstructing Gaza with the Saudi Crown Prince. That's according to the State Department in a readout of that meeting. It just shows how much there is to discuss right now, quite aside for trying to thrash some sort of deal together for Ukraine.
Yeah, and the Saudis finding themselves very much in the middle of lots of those kind of big geopolitical flashpoints, whether that's Gaza, and clearly Trump's got a fairly outlandish plan that he wants to perform there. He's new threats against Hamas over the weekend, where he was saying, that he was happy for Israel to resume the war unless they moved on to the next stage of the ceasefire talks. Also on Ukraine, Rubio, yes, things seem, as Jack was saying, things seem slightly more positive when it comes, when it comes to resuming aid, resuming that intelligence. But even today, Rubio is saying things like, well, you can't expect Russia to give all of Ukraine's territory back, which feels like one of those important concessions that really should come via the talks rather than the US making that on Ukraine's behalf. So I still think we're at a very difficult and delicate stage of all of this.
The Saudi Crown Prince also, as I said, meeting Volodymyr Zelensky, saying that he reiterated the kingdom's support for all international efforts aimed at resolving Ukraine's crisis and achieving peace. That's also on the front page of The Guardian. High-stakes talks aim to mend Kyiv's rift with the United States. Is that really the fundamentals of what Tuesday's meeting is about, then?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you've got people saying, Steve Witkoff is one of the envoys there who's looking after these talks, saying, well, the apology from Volodymyr Zelensky last week has gone some way towards mending those relationships. But yes, I think, even Downing Street will acknowledge that lots of the effort at the moment is going into mending those relationships between Washington and Kyiv, rather than even starting to talk to Russia. And so that shows you how far off we really are from from a real deal.
And the pressing question, obviously, for people like Marco Rubio is, where are your demands of concessions on Russia? And little is said about that.
We don't seem to have anything at the moment in terms of what Russia are going to have to give, apart from a pretty vague and loose statement from Donald Trump last week in which he said that sanctions may be a possibility if they stop, unless they stop lashing Ukraine. At the moment, it doesn't seem any signs of cajoling them to pull back, because we've heard pretty harrowing reports of more drone attacks from Russia, more aerial bombardments, capturing some of those cities inside Russia which Ukraine had managed to occupy in that cursed region. They clearly now are putting on a massive offensive, potentially realising that this is going to come to a head at some point and both sides will be forced round and they're going to carve up various bits of territory. But yeah, hopefully we get some sort of good positive news from Saudi Arabia when it comes to military intelligence.
Yes, indeed, and the first talks seem to exclude both Ukraine and the European Union, or Europe, should I say, because it includes the UK in that. You know, Ukraine now at the table effectively. And do you think the spat in the Oval Office allowed an opening also for Europe to have a voice in this now?
Well, it seemed to at first, but I mean, again, we're sort of hearing slightly less about this proposed peace plan that the UK and France are going to put forward.
A video call this coming
this weekend.
Yes, with all the leaders again. Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, it depends. It sort of depends now what happens in Jeddah and whether they manage to sort of break through some of the relations between Ukraine and the US. Loads of it is going to have to bend depending on what they talk about there. So clearly, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, they want to be part of brokering the peace here. I think they see themselves as being able to support the Ukrainian position. But, you know, he's under, obviously, Zelensky's under enormous pressure from the US to agree to things quite quickly, whether it's the minerals deal, a faster ceasefire. And so we'll see whether events kind of overtake what can happen this weekend.
Busy time for world leaders, keeping on top of all of this, isn't it? Lots more still to come to in the next part of our programme, including after the suspension of Rupert Lowe, the civil war continues for reform as Elon Musk considers backing a breakaway party. Back in a moment.
I want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people. This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No, but
I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brought.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down. As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Joining me once again, Jack Elsom and Jessica Elgot. Welcome back to both of you. Let's go to the Financial Times. We were used to the Conservative Party being something of a political soap opera. It feels like Reform has jumped straight in it, and now with the backing of Elon Musk.
Well, potentially, according to the FT. I mean, this was really that incredible fallout between Nigel Farage and one of his prominent MPs. Well, he's only got four now, was five, Rupert Lowe. And Rupert Lowe, it doesn't seem, after all the mudslinging of the past few days and tit for tat, there's going to be a route back for him into Reform. I don't think, although the Conservatives seem to suggest the door is open, that will be an option because he's criticised the Conservatives a hell of a lot. So it looks like now he might go it alone, and it looks like he might just have the backing of Elon Musk. Previously touted to give Reform Party £100 million, but then went a bit cold on Nigel. But actually, the reason Rupert Lowe...
That is an understatement for...
Well, exactly. Well, he said that Nigel Farage isn't now the person to lead Reform, and actually gave Rupert Lowe the nod. And that's really where Rupert Lowe... Exactly. Maybe started to get airs of grandeur and realised that, oh, maybe I could actually do this job and become Prime Minister. And now it looks like he might break away and form his own party.
So who would be in this little party then?
Well, there's some suggestions tonight of people who have come at Nigel Farage in the past and been bumped off by him. Ben Habib, the Telegraph suggests, former deputy leader of Reform, who now also had a very acrimonious falling out with Nigel Farage, could be a part of that. So who knows? Maybe it's sort of the the old guys, the old gang back together, coming to take on their old leader.
And history's littered with them, isn't there? They've tried to take on Nigel Farage and been thrown out of various parties.
Yes.
But the point you were making is there's a by-election coming, and they had momentum. Have they scuppered their own momentum here?
Well, I think that they almost certainly have damaged it. I mean, this by-election that's coming up in Runcorn, you'd have thought that even though it's got a very, very healthy Labour majority, that Reform could have had a go at taking that, especially with a low turnout, with the government struggling a little bit, especially on cost of living. And now it feels like Reform just look pretty chaotic, to be honest. They've got 5 MPs. They're in a fight to the death with one of them. One of them's thinking of starting his own new party. And I don't think, as well, the kind of associations with Trump has really helped the party either. It's felt like Farage has stumbled a bit when it comes to the response on Ukraine. And so all of this, I think, doesn't add to an air of respectability that they're trying to garner.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, Rupert Lowe is obviously very well known and liked within the grassroots of Reform, so that whole row is going to demoralise lots of their base when they need to get them in knocking on doors in various constituencies, something they haven't really had before. They've been very good at the air war, but it's, getting into the nitty-gritty of knocking on doors and pounding pavements, which they've lacked. But I do still think that this is Nigel Farage's party. Any sort of party he's led in the past has been a one-man band. He's probably got the most face and name recognition of any politician in Britain, I reckon, probably even more than the Prime Minister.
I thought you were going to say more than Liz Truss.
Anyway. even more than Liz Truss, I would say. Yeah. And Rupert Lowe, he's big on Twitter. Does he really command the same amount of following as Nigel Farage? I don't think he does, and so I still think that Nigel Farage is going to be the man to lead them. And
some difficult decisions coming up for the Labour government, including on welfare, more evidence of which is in your paper, The Guardian.
Yes, so Keir Starmer was talking to a private meeting of the Labour MPs tonight, where he said that that the number of people who are jobless in this country is indefensible. The number of people who are having to take disability payments is something that the government needs to tackle. He says they've ended up in the worst of all worlds, where the system is incentivising people not to work when they might be able to, and might be able to get fulfilment from it. And there's a lot of discomfort in the Labour Party about the big cuts that we think are coming down the line. MPs told me tonight when we were outside the meeting that he was trying to give them the case that they could make, the moral case for how much is better for people to be in work. But even in the room, there were people. There was one MP who raised the case of his own disabled daughter and about personal independence payments. MPs said to me they didn't think that Keir Starmer had a really good answer for that guy and didn't even really address the concerns directly. So I think it is going to be a tricky one for the party.
Only got 30 seconds left, but I know you want to talk about the Sentencing Council versus the Minister.
I mean, this is an extraordinary clash between the executive branch, the Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood, and independent judges over these new sentencing guidelines, which came out last week, in which it was suggested that ethnic minorities, religious minorities and transgender people could be given softer sentences because they would be basically having to take into account those factors when deciding to take them to jail. The Justice Secretary wrote to the Sentencing Council saying, I want you to drop these. It's giving the impression of two-tier justice. The Sentencing Council today have come back with a very, very robust no and saying that Shabana Mahmood is in very big danger of treading on the impartiality of justices. So it's a big old row between Labour Justice Minister and the independent judges.
Fascinating. Jack and Jessica, thank you. See you for more in the 11. Right now, let's take a look at the weather.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, a developing northerly wind will make it much colder over the next few days with wintry showers and widespread overnight frosts. Expect below average temperatures into next week. So mostly fine but cold start tomorrow. An extensive frost over northern and central parts, but the north and east will see a scattering of mainly coastal showers. Northern and eastern parts will see the showers spreading further inland during the morning with some snow likely on northern hills.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.